see if we can pull it out. Greenseers coming in with the Zed Lee Sin deck, lining it up against the War Mothers. Against the Anivia deck. Do you think there's a big difference between the Anivia and War Mothers when paired up against this Lee Sin? We saw it take a win earlier against Lee Sin.
Oh yeah, like I had said, I'm banking my entire matchup knowledge on that one game. So this Anivia, 100% win rate against the Lee Sin. Literally cannot lose this matchup. It's impossible. I've never seen it before. It's unthinkable even. So this should be a really easy game 1 win for Easy to win.
Well, if we're going by history, it's never been done any other way. So it would be a huge upset otherwise.
Yeah, there's a first time for everything, but sometimes you got to wait on it just a little bit longer. And with no Lee Sin in the opening hand of Greenseers, it's not looking phenomenal for him. It always feels so weird to cast these Lee Sin decks because the analysis usually comes down to, did you open Lee Sin?
Yeah, it has a couple turns to draw it. Can maybe go wide with this Diana. I mean, would it be weird to just get this Diana down as a quick attack unit? I mean, there's not much blocking going on early. Declines to do so. Opting first for the open attack.
All right, I'm flipping my analysis. Greenseers takes the early life advantage. How could Easy to Win possibly ever hope to come back from this, Nola? You're down 2 life. 2. That's 10% of your life total. This is Greenseers is just a hard favorite in this game.
Absolutely.
Literally just going to run away with this one. Snowball this advantage. It's crazy.
Threatening 4 next turn. I don't know what they're going to do. This Entreat, that doesn't contribute anything to the board. Guaranteed to grab the Anivia here. Only champ in the deck. It's 3 more turns, 4 damage on the board. That sounds like almost lethal. 16 damage.
Yeah.
How could it happen?
You're only 14 away from ending the game. That's nothing. I've seen people die with negative 14, no problem, easy. Greenseer's not going to play the Diana plane. Actually, doesn't even throw down the Mentor of Stones. So hanging on to that spell mana, maybe hoping to top deck the Lee Sin, but still does not find it. So it is just going to be another 4 damage open attack.
Yeah, maybe trying to get some cards. Going to go to maybe try and grind out Easy to Win with this slow deployment. Try and get them to use the Vile Feast maybe early. Maybe see if they can get the Avalanche out of them early here. Nope, this Tavern Keeper's perfect for that too. It's going to be able to test this board as well as heal back up. Half of the damage has been done so far.
Speaking of that Avalanche, if you had played the Mentor of Stones, I think you would have had to burn a Dusk Petal Dust in order to avoid overdrawing from hand size if an Avalanche had come out after the fact. So maybe that is a consideration of what Greenseers went for. But now, I mean, this kindly Tavern Keeper, just keeping him up at 17, does contest everything on the board pretty nicely. And the third Mentor of Stones, really not going to do a whole lot in this matchup. Even the unleveled Anivia is going to be able to consistently pick these off the board. And I think that Greenseers has to get at least one of these down and start buffing up some of his units, just because this Anivia is going to kill literally everything in his hand other than this Diana or this Eye of the Dragon.
Yeah, going to have to get some more toughness on there for sure. Not going to see Anivia till the round 7 attack turn. I like this open attack from the Tavern Keeper. No, it decides to come with the pass. Not spending any mana. Show me what you got, and then I'll show you what I got.
And it's not like Greenseers is pressured by hand size at the moment. Only has 8 in hand. Throwing down the Mentor makes sense. You might have to waste a couple of those gems, but it will at least get you a Dragonling for the attack turn. And since you do have to be the aggressor in this matchup, it doesn't feel bad per se.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also has a Deny. You can't think that they want to use, Greenseers wants to use a Deny on something like an Avalanche early or, a Withering Whale. But the way that this board is shaping up, if they can't buff with this Mentor, gonna lose a lot to a possible Avalanche. We'll see.
Yeah, and as you had said, I don't even know if you actually do throw out a Deny into an Avalanche here. It feels like you have to save it for the Harrowing sort of baseline. You could use it on the Anivia ability, that Glacial Storm, but I feel like with this being the only protection that you actually have for a Lee Sin, if you do eventually find one, you're probably going to have to hang on to this for a clutch moment, even if it means dying with the Deny in your hand, waiting for a Lee Sin that's never going to come. I do think that is the right way to play this matchup, because without a champion, and specifically the Lee Sin, you are not winning this game. Diana is not Zed. She is not a backup win condition. I do think he has the Horns of the Dragon. He does not. He has Tasty
No.
Fey Folk.
Definitely a downgrade for this particular matchup. The lifesteal is not going to be too relevant as the Anivia is going to look to just grind the game out completely. We see the first removal fired off. The whale here is going to pop the whole board, really. And if we go back to hand size, something should be played here because we're looking at 10 cards now.
This is so awkward for Greenseers.
Yeah.
As we had mentioned, it's Anivia 100% win rate, and this is why. I mean, what are you going to... You can't even block this Kindly Tavern Keeper. You could buff up your Eye of the Dragon to trade with it, but that's not really what you want to be doing. You could throw out this Concussive Palm, but none of these plays feel great, and you do have 5 public knowledge useless cards in your hand in these gems and these Dusk Petal Dusts.
Yeah. Half your hand's basically on the board. When it comes to information, so we'll be threatening to do that trade, and I don't even think that the trade would even happen. It seems like this is also just a double spell to maybe get a Dragonling on the next turn. You don't really want to develop the Diana. It feels kind of bad with these petals to not do it next turn, and maybe be able to pair it with a gem to take out that blocker.
I was a little surprised not to see Easy go for that attack, but I think he is just playing respectfully of the Pale Cascade, which we do see picked up by Greenseers for turn, but that's not a Lee Sin.
Yeah, still not seeing the Lee Sin here. The Pale Cascade will provide a draw to maybe get a little closer to the namesake champion of this deck. The Nivea is going to come down. That's going to be a great blocker.
All right, so we do have this Mentor of Stones and Diana down, which means we can kill the Anivia, turn it into an egg, but is that really something that you want to be doing when you have a hard time killing the egg anyway, and you have this,
Yeah, and also with your opponent going into turn 7, probably looking for this Anivia to die. Wouldn't be surprised to see it get glimpsed, honestly. Maybe not here, because the Tavern Keeper would be a prime target, but going into a Rekindler turn, always love to see the champion die. So I think this pull on Tavern Keeper makes sense.
I was trying to figure out what I was saying when my brain completely shut off mid-sentence, and the thought that I was trying to articulate is that your Diana is going to lose Challenger, and you don't have anything to kill the egg with.
Yeah.
So that it will still sit around as a looming threat as your opponent approaches turn 10. The Rekindler will be online for the following turn. And I mean, while you do prevent the Glacial Storm, which would kill your Mentor of Stones, I don't think you're really that worried about your Mentor dying when you did open all 3 copies of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the fact that there's 2 units there, if the Mentor is going to die, you could be dead from a block anyway. So yeah, not worrying about the Glacial Storm. Definitely going to get the kill while you do have the Challenger here. A nice clean one on this Tavern Keeper. It does also deny a good clean Rekindler turn next turn.
All right, so we're going to soften it up into this Dragonling. Would be surprised to see the Pale Cascade come out here. As I had mentioned, no clean answer for the egg. Have you ever seen Diana level in this deck? I feel like we saw it earlier today, but it was because they opened like 3 Diana.
Yeah, it was because of that reason. And we do see it here. The glimpse is also denying lifesteal is not relevant here, but probably looking to set up that Rekindler turn next turn, get this Anivia into the death pool for maybe a future harrowing.
Yeah, I would imagine that this telegraphs a Rekindler on the following turn, or maybe Easy even just has like, sort of a dead hand. There are a lot of expensive cards in here, and maybe you just want a couple of cards. Well, that is one of the things about the Lee Sin deck. It really never threatens Glimpse Beyond. I mean, I'm not going to deny it when Harrowing is your win condition and you play things like Ruination, so you're really always safe to get that one off, and Easy just going to use it to deny a little bit of extra damage, and now this Diana going to lose the Challenger. Probably not ever going to get it back, because it does require a 5th Nightfall card in order to actually turn that on once the champion is leveled up. Hush doesn't mean a lot in this matchup, I don't think. The Anivia gets its value on attack, so unless Easy to Win goes for a developmental attack, you're never going to get value off of that. You're generally not killing these Anivias, so denying the egg out of it really doesn't happen too often. We'll have to see if Greenseers can actually find a use case for this card a little bit later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Not looking at his best here. Interesting from that last turn, not to back up too much, but this is the second time this has come up where the petal was played after the Diana in a turn with the excess mana. And I wonder why it's not played before. I'm just curious. Any reason to maybe save it? I might be missing something. But I'd be interested to ask Greenseers about that later.
That's always the caster problem. Is it, am I missing something, or was that actually a misplay? And at this point, I would have to assume that because this is a newer adaptation of the deck, it's possible that the players just don't have nearly as many reps on it and could be forgetting about the Dusk Petal Dust, because Nightfall isn't something that everybody has reps on. It's possible that you've never played with this card before and you just forget that it does give you that cost reduction on the Diana.
Absolutely. And there is some warrant. Whenever I first saw this list, me and Ez2W were talking about it yesterday, of just being a burst spell. Like, say you had it later on to be able to give you a burst spell to go with your Lee Sin or something like that. So there's reason to keep it. And then maybe afterthought was like, well, now for mana efficiency's sake, let's play it. So I'm not saying it's wrong at all. I was just wondering what the consideration was. So, back to the attack turn. Didn't really do much with that Anivia last turn, just establish it. Didn't want to pick off this Mentor. Both of them, actually.
We don't go for the Zenith Blade, but we are, kind of throwing out a lethal attack here. It's obviously not going to actually work out that way because we do have a lot of blockers to line up still. But, I mean, we saw the Catalyst come out last game in the match against Salty Simon on this turn 8 to skip it and get the Anivia leveled up. And if that does happen here, for Ez2Win, I think the game is more or less just over. Maybe this is the turn where we go for the Hush onto the Anivia if it blocks something big to deny the egg coming out.
Yeah, trying to prevent that setup, like you said, with the Catalyst. Because open attacking with 2 leveled Anivias is going to do a big chunk to this board. If not remove just about everything in play, be able to soften it up for a Whale or something, maybe in combination with a Whale on the combat as well. Could handily deal with this whole board.
All right, and it looks like this triple Mentor of Stones draw is actually working out really well here for Greenseers, who has gotten 2 buffs down onto the Diana, has gotten a buff and a half down onto this Eye of the Dragon. This is generally not how the Lee Sin deck plays, and maybe that is why Ez2Win is struggling right now. This is not. I mean, usually the wide board is relatively useless. It's a lot of 1/1s, it's a lot of 1/3s, it's a lot of 2/1s, but these Mentors have been allowed to sit around for a lot longer than they should have been.
Absolutely. Even last turn, the Navy attack could have wiped out both of them. And filled the hand, packed the hand with gems, would have been an overdraw or forced to play at least 1 gem to be able to draw a card this turn. That's the one thing. Sometimes you want to deny the gems from your opponent's hand, but I think those cases often come up when there's a Lee Sin directly challenging you. Whereas here, if you let the buffs go off, the gems actually get way better. Like you said, this is a double buff Diana, and the Eye of the Dragon also has a buff, so I don't know. Might come back to bite Ez2Win for not taking care of those Mentors earlier.
And it looks like we will get the Hush onto the Anivia to deny the double Anivia if we are getting a Catalyst turn here. I mean, there is still, as we had mentioned in the matchup that we saw previously, Harsh Winds is in the main deck. It is the Anivia spill. Any additional copies, and instead we're just going to get a Flash Freeze to stop this Diana. Yeah, even Hush doesn't work here, as the Diana would then turn back into a 2/2 and actually die to the Anivia, so don't want to use that one here as kind of a cheeky combat trick. While it does normally stop the Frostbite from stopping your units, it doesn't work when you're buffing them. Combat has been playing out a lot longer than I kind of expected it to. Now, finally going to resolve, and not nearly as much happening as we might have expected. We are going to see Easy fall down to 11 here. Does hang on to both the Niveas, does have the mana for the Catalyst if that's the play that we're going for. And now with this Diana softened up to a 6/4, this could be the end of the game if Easy has the Catalyst here. I never thought a turn 8 ramp spell would make this much of a difference.
Yeah. Not to mention the 3 life on top of it too. Being able to wipe out this whole board would be huge. Notably, the fact that even though Greenseers would pick up 6 gems, if there's no units, if all the other units die at the same time, you're not gonna be able to make any use of them. And the one counterplay to that, the Pale Cascade, would feel really bad if you had to use that in combat. We'll probably have to fire off one of these petals to get the Nightfall on that.
Okay, so Avarice and Sentry comes down instead. This does mean we won't be getting 2-leveled Anivias, but I mean, even the 1 Anivia still wipe out most of this board.
I'm sorry, I thought there was no Weirding Stones? No Weirding Stones. It was only
nope, just 2 Catalyst. Looks like we are going to fire off the Dusk Petal Dust just to burst pass. Really curious as to the consideration on that one. Maybe just ticking more towards this Lee Sin level up, not wanting to do the big mana commitment of the second copy of Hush and take our Deny off the table, but instead we get the tasty Fey Folk. That is, yeah, it's not a Lee Sin. I mean, Greenseers has done a really good job of trying to win the game without Lee Sin, but eventually it probably will catch up to you, and that is the situation that we find ourselves in right now, as, 4 out of 6 units are about to die to this here Anivia.
Absolutely. I think Tasty Fey Folk is no Horns of the Dragon as the backup plan, especially not in this match. Fine in the aggro matches, but not really what you're looking for here.
And I think we are now sort of at the point where, well, we've been saving this Deny for the protection for the Lee Sin. I don't think Lee Sin's coming. I think that we are going to have to all in on this Diana, which doesn't sound like a winning line. And honestly, most of the time it's not. But there are really weird considerations that you have to make with this Lee Sin deck of, yeah, this isn't normally how I want to win the game, but it is something that I'm going to have to do. It's just kind of the hand that I was dealt. A little surprised to see these gems fired off. Now the Zenith Blade not going to draw the additional copy as we have shut off the Daybreak for the turn, but we did get this outside of the range of Grasp of the Undying, so not wanting to commit the Deny or the Pale Cascade for something like that. And if Greenseers draws a Zenith Blade for turn, I'm going to laugh at him. There's really no 2 ways around it.
Yeah, and with these 4 gems can go to 13, there's going to be 5 toughness Anivias, much like the game we saw played earlier, Diana Lee Sin, trying to get the Diana to climb over that 5 toughness. 11 health, a handful of presumably removal and heals, and as we mentioned earlier, Anivia, you don't see it played too often, but that champion spell Harshwinds could really come into play on these all-in pushes.
I feel like there's been a lot of back and forth over the course of the length of Legends of Runeterra about whether or not Frostbite effects are inherently broken, but actually pause that as we are going to get this Harrowing, get another Anivia out here, this off-turn Harrowing. Oh, man, is this something that Greenseers feels like he needs to commit the Deny on? I don't think he can. I think you really have to all in on this Diana, as bad as it looks, and understand that my opponent doesn't have the attack token. I'm either killing them next turn, or I was never winning this game anyway. And I think you need to hang on to that Deny for a vengeance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2 Anivias, what's the difference between 2 Anivias and 3 at this point? Effectively, this Harrowing is effectively a 9 mana Anivia that is deniable, but not worth a deny, and Greenseers agrees.
Can't imagine anything else comes out of easy on 3 mana. Maybe just fires off a Glimpse Beyond to get a couple of additional cards. But it really comes down to, does this Diana attack work out for Greenseers? And I don't think it does. I'm trying to math it out. Even if he doesn't have anything, can you actually get this up to a 16 attack unit? But he finds the Lee Sin.
Wow.
And he doesn't. But he doesn't have the Zenith Blade because he committed the gems first.
Yeah. Wow. This is the second time we saw this today. This deck is decidedly hard to play with this Diana, and I feel. And not finding Lee Sin.
It
until
wasn't.
late.
I do want to reiterate here. It wasn't wrong to use the gems first, buffing it up. Buffing that up outside of the range of the Grasp of the Undying was what he was going for there, and I think that was a fine play. But there are a lot of punishing top decks in the Lee Sin deck, and it comes up a lot in discard aggro as well, where you play for one top deck and then you just get a different one. We finally have the Lee Sin online, and now you're really regretting, not daybreaking that Zenith Blade.
It's amazing the play to the daybreak mechanic actually, especially with a deck with so many potential burst spells. Like you see the Lee Sin, this comes up often. Like some people like to play the Solari Priestess with it, and the deck lends itself to wanting to play the burst spells and open attacking in a lot of spots, and makes that card look weird sometimes. I don't think it was wrong, obviously, playing around the grasp. There is only one grasp, but there could also be. Am I looking at that wrong? Yeah, Greenseers. No, yeah. There's one grasp, so playing around and giving it that much weight is tough because it's not playing around anything but that one grasp, really, unless there's a bunch of Vile Feast. There's only 3 Vile Feast, so that could have been consideration too, because we haven't seen one yet. So a double Vile Feast could have been played as well.
I don't think you attack with these other 2 units. They do just bounce off of an Anivia and also give your opponent an additional draw from this Avarosan Sentry. And it's going to feel so bad for Greenseers when you put all this thought into this turn. How do I navigate it? What's the best line for lethal? And then a Harsh Winds just comes out of easy to win, and all of the consideration is gone. All of your hopes for the game are gone. We're actually going to throw the gem down onto the Lee Sin. This does still not represent lethal damage, I believe. Oh, no, this represents exact lethal, as it'll be 7 from the Lee Sin, and then the 4 Overwhelm from the Diana. You even have the Pale Cascade in case a couple of Vile Feasts or something comes out, but instead it will be that Anivia's Harsh Winds, completely taking everything off the table. And Greenseers can still Pale Cascade to actually get the kick back to the hand.
I don't even know if he wants to go for the kick here, though, Boulevard. If it won't remove the Anivia, and it'll put effectively another Harsh Winds back in hand when you consider that he has no way to remove the Anivias that are in play. This is a tough spot.
Yeah. And we're running low on spells, so I think the reason that he goes for the kick is he doesn't want the Anivias to be able to kill the Lee Sin, as 3 of them would represent that little bit of damage. Also, the 3 damage would have been pushed on thanks to that Vile Feast. And I think you are right. If the barrier wasn't going to be popped, we probably wouldn't have seen the kick, but instead is going to be forced to use that one. And now really doesn't have a lot of spells on backup, could even have a hard time getting this Lee Sin to survive. And without barrier on it, I think that you really need to still keep this Diana around as well. Okay, these are not bad pickups by Greenseers, but I don't know that they're going to be enough, since the 3rd Anivia has come down. Thanks to the Chronicler of Ruin, you don't have a chance to use this Palm of the Dragon pre-combat and deny one of the Glacial Storms. So, I mean, unless you want to commit the Deny and the Bastion, this Diana is dying this turn.
Yeah, that's a tough loss at just 3 attack triggers here for all the commitment that you put into this Diana. It was looking like the ride to victory, but something's going to have to go. Not going to be able to protect both.
Oh, and you even need to use Bastion to protect the Lee Sin to get it into the next turn, or deny. But, I mean, if you can get the Bastion and the gem down onto this Lee Sin, he is at 9 attack. He is still threatening lethal. So it looks like we're going to commit the Bastion here. This will protect the Lee Sin, but Vile Feast and Unspeakable Horror are on the table as ways to pop this spell shield. And you really don't want to have to deny one of these Anivia abilities. You really want to be saving that for the next turn so that you can get your Lee Sin push through, a Round of Vengeance, something like that. But, I mean, there is a Harsh Winds in Easy to Win's hand, that Anivia that got kicked back. I don't think there's any hope for Greenseers in this matchup at this point.
No, and the more I see this matchup, I think that this Anivia deck just might be the real counter to this Lee Sin deck. It's been playing well. I mean, if it wins here, it's going to have 100% win percent against, again, Lee Sin Diana. So you know what that means. The matchup.
Yeah, we said it at the beginning. This is literally unwinnable for the Lee Sin deck. I don't care if he saw a Lee Sin on 4. It wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever. This matchup was always going to play out this way. I'm actually a little surprised that Greenseers hasn't gone for the surrender, just knowing that there is that Harsh Wind sitting in Easy to Win's hand, that he had to kick back there to try and protect the Lee Sin, and now the Avalanche going to come out. stop that Lee Sin from surviving. And even if you draw one now, it's not going to be enough. The gem is only going to represent 4 damage. This deny, it just never found an opportunity to play it.
Yeah, you talked about it earlier in the game. It's like you either, deny harrowing or a ruination or a vengeance, or you lose the game with it in your hand. That's how you got to play it, and it looks like it's going to be the latter.
And yeah, I don't think this game played out any different, even if we had, just to go back to it, that extra Zenith Blade in hand from using it on the Daybreak rather than pumping up the gems first. I don't think it ended up impacting the game at all because so many harsh wins have come out of Ez2Win. And now, even with this additional copy in hand, there's no way that you are going to be able to survive this turn, Greenseers. And he might actually live through the following turn, but there's nothing that he can draw that's going to get him back into this. And he would need at least 4 or 5 cards to get it done at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. Even just surviving this open attack here, we see 3 Glacial Winds, that's 6. Only 3 blockers. You're not going to get the lifesteal. So 6 plus 6, yeah, this is 12 right here. Gonna have to use a deny just to stay alive. They'd pick up the Lee Sin, but not gonna have anything to go with it.
Yeah, you would need one card that ideally you can play at burst speed that gives the Lee Sin plus 4 attack and overwhelm, and then still find an answer for this harsh winds.
Well, the Greenseers might have to wait till spoilers tomorrow because I don't think this is going to be an option here. So we'll see that that part of the game that you love so much, where the game's over and we got 50 seconds of watching it end. So
limbo, as I like to call it. And so one thing that I want to bring up, because I know that as a player you've probably run into this, it feels like still playing out something like this, you're kind of playing towards a card that doesn't exist. And it usually happens when you're going for lethal against your opponent and they have like 5 mana, and like, in the back of your head, there's literally no card in their deck that stops me from going for this. And then your imagination starts to run wild of, what if there is a card that he can top deck that's going to give this plus 4 attack and overwhelm and also play through harsh winds?
Yeah. I don't know. I like to play pretty much till the end, but if the end is there, I don't have any problem surrendering. And when it's on board with known information, definitely. I mean, if I don't know, I can assume that they have 8 cards in hand that I'm probably rocked. I'll keep it going. if I don't have like a dinner date or something, I'll keep it going. But outside of that, if it's all on board, in that spot. So we see keeping 1 Dustbringer to have an early drop. Picks up the Lee Sin, so we will get to see the Lee Sin this game in a timely fashion. No real support here. The Fey Folk will be nice, though, for the lifesteal against the aggressive draws.
I think if one of those Lunari Dustbringers was a Diana, this is probably about as good as a hand as you could ask for against an aggro deck, but doesn't find the Diana just yet. We'll have the Dusk Petals to turn on the Lee Sin a little bit later on, get those Nightfalls rolling. But overall, this is a pretty solid opener for Greenseers. Definitely a little bit better than the last game.
Definitely. And like you said, yeah, this is like 1 card off of like probably the best hand you can have against an aggressive deck. We'll see how it develops. Picking up the Sonic Wave. Sonic Wave's going to be nice too. Be able to contest something like a Misfortune, or you could even trade that Tasty for Gangplank. If turn the Gangplank purple and see how tasty it is.
So in the Lee Sin that I've been running, I really like Tasty Fey Folk, but it doesn't feel great to me against these Bilgewater decks just because there are so many different removal spells that they could have to kill it. Because the keg is something that's difficult for me to deal with, all of a sudden Make It Rain kills the Tasty Fey Folk. Even if I have a little bit of protection for it, like a Pale Cascade, Death's Hand would still take it out. And overall, personally, I found it very difficult to get value out of a Tasty Fey Folk in these Bilgewater aggro matchups.
I do agree. But I think it's just a necessary evil to have another lifesteal unit. Don't look to get value out of this, I don't think. I think if you can get a trade-off with the Tasty Fey Folk with a 2/2 even, and then full heal the Nexus or something on 3rd turn. Even with tricks in hand, don't be greedy with it. Take what you can get, because like you said, it's not too hard to remove. And then if they end up with more mana to even play around with Noxian Fervor and things like that to push lethal.
Yeah, for me personally, it's gotten to the point where I know we had seen Twin Disciplines a little bit earlier from some of these players. I've actually turned over to Sunblessed Vigor to give that permanent health over to something like this. And I mean, a Zenith bladed up Tasty Feyfolk can run away with a game. The problem is actually getting it down onto that in a way that it will actually survive.
Yeah, trying to set it up with a Mentor too is kind of slow as well. But we'll see. Doesn't trade with the Misfortune here. Definitely disagrees. It would be super overhealing on that block though, so or putting yourself in range of, like you said, make it rain on top of the Misfortune's skill.
Yeah, the Death's Hand would have opened up as an option as well, even if you did play the Pale Cascade. So, like you said, I think Tasty Feyfolk is just a little bit too awkward to play defense with in a matchup like this. You kind of want to go in for those attacks, full heal the Nexus, see what you can trade down onto. And now I do think it is going to be a little bit awkward here for Greenseers again because you can't actually get up to a barrier on the Lee Sin to really feel safe going after that Misfortune. You do have a second Lee Sin in hand, so maybe you are going to be fine just playing this as a 3-4 challenger. The next one is the one that I'll pillar on as my win condition because you do still have to commit a little bit of extra resources out of Easy to actually kill the Lee Sin once it takes out the MF, but I do think you need to take out this MF sooner rather than later.
Definitely, I agree. Giving it another attack also makes this Lee Sin bad on the block because the Misfortune would take out the barrier even if you were to be able to shield up. So maybe your best opportunity is here. The question is, what spell would you play? This is where we see this Petal show up as a potential spell without having to commit a Lee Sin Sonic Wave or a regular Sonic Wave into enabling the Challenger.
Definitely a little bit awkward here because even if you commit anything to give this Lee Sin Challenger, then all of a sudden your Tasty Feyfolk is left completely unprotected in terms of your opponent going in with a Death's Hand on it. And I'm a little surprised to see this Duskbringer going in just because there is such an advantageous block out of this Imperial Demolitionist. And I really don't think I want to be committing my Pale Cascade to a 2-1 just to get it to trade into a 2-3. That seems a little weird to me.
Yeah. Seems like a bad one to put in there, yeah, because if the Pale Cascade comes off, there could be something like a Noxian Fervor to knock out the Feyfolk as well. That's what this Misfortune block is looking to line up here. I think you kind of paint yourself into a corner where it's like, well, you want to give away the value by attacking this Dustbringer, or you want to get blown out by a Noxian Fervor. And the block with the Misfortune kind of makes you feel like you want to just let this combat happen and give them the value, and you take what you can get, and we'll just call it even.
And I think that this is a little bit too good of a block for Greenseers to want to go for something here, but actually does greed it out and goes for the Pale Cascade, says, you know what, I'm going to have my cake and eat it too. Let's get this Imperial Demolitionist off the field. And now Ez2Win has a lot of punishes opened up to him and doesn't have any of them. Wow. It's just going to lose both units.
Ate the cake and it tasted like purple. That was perfect. With 4 spell mana, and then, wow, that was a great turn for Greenseers. I don't know if I would have made that as greedy of a play as that, but that was huge.
I probably wouldn't, but that's why he's in the finals, understands that greed does become a necessity sometimes, and now he's just left with this Precious Pet, has even some clean answers for the Gangplank through this Sonic Wave Resonating Strike combo. Would be a little worried about losing his Lee Sin to something to pop the barrier, but you do have that second Lee Sin on backup, so I think that Lee Sin for Gangplank is a trade that you'd be more or less okay making in a situation like this.
Absolutely. And then even still, I mean, this Gangplank is probably sitting at, what, 2 ticks right now? We saw the Misfortune attack. Maybe the Greenseers has been on board the whole game. And we will see this Diana, too, come into play. Has the Petal, has another 1-drop. Okay, here's a Jack. It's a Jack instead of the Gangplank.
All right, so that doesn't have Overwhelm. If we want to use this Duskbringer, we could go ahead and block that, try to take this out with the Lee Sin on the following turn. And I kind of like the setup that Greenseers has here now. This Diana finally coming into the hand. We'll be able to pick off a couple of units. And yeah, this isn't not a bad spot. A little bit of an awkward one still, as I do think that it's very possible that Easy just fires off this Jack the Winner Sleep with the Fishies onto himself to start off the turn, but maybe not if he's not going for the attack first, not wanting to run into this Lee Sin. Might be telegraphing that he doesn't have a way to pop the barrier, which is very possible since we didn't see any response out of those blocks on the previous turn. I guess Easy just kind of clogged up on a lot of the heftier units in this deck.
Yeah, no doubt. Just could be sitting up top with Captain Farron. Darius could be stranded in the mix too. Those are probably looking like goose eggs right now. Because once this board gets cleaned up, which is not going to be hard to do with the Lee Sin and all these Sonic Waves, there's still the Eye of the Dragon. We see the Eye of the Dragon. And more heals. Very good position here. And Easy just hasn't been able to gain any traction here. You saw the block with the Misfortune last combat.
Ooh.
Wow. Throws away a blocker here that's was presumably gonna die to this Diana anyway. Does get a tick up. Could also be pretty heavy on burn as well. Maybe a double decimate hand. Something like that. Probably not happy to see this eye come down.
This is the matchup that Greenseers sort of adapted his Lee Sin deck for when bringing this Diana. And while she herself hasn't made the biggest splash in this matchup, we'll be able to kill his Zap Spray Fin here. Yeah, once again, this Dusk Petal Dust coming down after the Diana.
Yeah, it does put the barrier on the Lee Sin, so I'm not going to expect to see a Sonic Wave here. The Diana still has challengers, so I don't know. I don't know if you want to try and maybe just get the free kill on the Zap with the Diana.
If we played this Dusk Petal Dust and then go Sonic Wave, we literally did just throw away this card, other than ticking it towards the Lee Sin evolution. But I would imagine that if we see the Sonic Wave, it means that we're going to see the Resonating Strike, and that means we're only floating 2 spell mana into the following turn. I'm also surprised to see the Lee Sin going for the Zap Spray Fin rather than the Diana.
Yeah,
the quick attack does feel safer than the barrier.
I think this is just, I have a shield on this Lee Sin. I'm attacking. You're not going to be able to deny me killing your Zap. So what are you going to do with it? You want to Noxian Fervor it away or what? Whereas otherwise, there could be possibly a Noxian Fervor from the Jack to the Diana to keep that elusive attacker, which is pretty important here. Not going to be able to push through any damage with this Eye of the Dragon, making a Dragonling next turn, and being able to actually hit face and try and level up this Gangplank is probably the plan to get through this board.
Well, Easy's thinking really hard about something, and it'd have to be, you would assume, a top decked answer. I still can't get over how well that tasty Feyfolk turn ended up working out for Greenseers. Just no interaction out of Ez2Win so far in this game.
Can't believe it either, yeah.
And has played 2 spells, so will get the Dragonling. Doesn't have to use this Guiding Touch. Not playing mana efficiently, just instead deciding I would like to save this for a little bit later, as Sonic Wave isn't really what you want to be using on off turns to go ahead and give Lee Sin barrier if that is the kind of play that you're going for. So I do like the Guiding Touch a little bit better, but now Misfortune going to turn off the Dragonling for the turn. And just a pass over from Greenseers. I wouldn't have minded necessarily a Hush down onto this Misfortune. I feel like this is not a matchup where your Hush gets a lot of value. It's mostly either turning off MF or turning off a Keg or maybe an elusive unit so that you can block it for the turn. But now there's no great blocks for this Jack the Winner. I mean, you can go ahead and throw away the Dusk Petal Dust and not feel too bad about it. No, Mentor of the Stone is not a bad pickup either.
No, this is going to, even if it dies, going to be able to keep the proactive spells going. Now that there's any lack of that with these 2 Sonic Waves. And now we have a Zap. Lost a Zap last turn. This is going to look to push 3 damage. Again, that Hush. Holding that Hush. We might see the Hush come down here and get a good block in. Maybe with the Diana. I mean, there's no great block here with the Misfortune being active.
I really like going in with Jack the Winner here as well, I feel. Even if my opponent goes for a block with the Lee Sin, the MF ability will pop the barrier. There's nothing that my opponent can do, like, I mean, maybe I'm worried about a Bastion at that point.
Yeah, or possibly the idea that the Dragonling might be able to block with a Pale Cascade. That could be a nightmare. You don't want to see any lifesteal happen, I don't think, at this point. I imagine they have some kind of Darius or, every point of damage is going to be important. If their hand is heavy of decimates or, you know, Darius, then it's pretty important that there's no more life gain this game. We'll see how it plays out.
Looks like Greenseers is contemplating this Hush, but understands that Diana and Lee Sin are the only things that can actually block this Zap Spray Fin, and really doesn't seem willing to lose the Diana or have 3 damage pushed down onto this Lee Sin. And I don't blame him. I mean, going down to 13 isn't the scariest life total in the world. One of the problems you're going to run into is you have not played 2 spells this turn, so you're not getting a Dragonling next turn just yet. And I don't think this Diana is really doing a whole lot for you right now. I wouldn't necessarily mind sacrificing it to the Zap Spray Fin, but Ez2Win did just pull another spell out of his deck. It could be a Make It Rain, and I think he'd be pretty willing to fire that off. Okay, I thought, nope. Okay, no, we are just denying the 2 damage by throwing the Dragonling in front of it. Not what I expected.
No, well, the Dragonling's going to die anyway. I think that you're not really solving the problem unless you're going to challenge it next turn. And like you said, the Diana isn't really providing much value. It's not close to leveling up. I think if I drew another Diana, I'd probably rather have the Diana to play and get Challenger in the same turn to maybe pick off this MF while Lee Sin was doing some other challenge. But I don't know.
And I mean, Greenseer is starting to run out of cards. You know, he's going to be able to level the Lee Sin pretty soon. He has played a lot of spells this game. Now does have 2 spells active for this Dragonling, but I mean, one of these cards is a Lee Sin, one is a Deny. He's really running out of proactivity. This will sort of be the last turn that he can do it with the spells he has available to him, but shouldn't have too much of a problem picking off either this Jack the Winner and the Zap Spray Fin or the MF and the Zap.
Yeah, going to be able to manage this board, but has to actually close this game. We're on the 8th turn. This is like the Captain Farron turn. There's a single Captain Farron. Gonna have to do, going for the double Sonic Wave. Gonna go for the full clear, potentially. This is gonna level up the Lee Sin, get the kick going. Resign to say, look, I'm not gonna draw the Zenith Blade for the Overwhelm. We're just gonna start kicking on the regular. Has the Deny back up as well. This kick does do 8. We'll be able to clear this Jack with that. And it's nice because you notice how this Jack never took any damage. One counter to the kick, as we saw earlier, is Noxian Fervor in away what's getting kicked. So I wonder if that's going to come back.
Yeah, good call. They're actually going to not be able to stop this Jack unless we see like double Noxian Fervor. But even then, Greenseers has this Deny that he's been hanging on to the entire time. And if I can get 2 Noxian Fervors out of my opponent for my Deny, I'm going to feel really good about that. And Ez2Win is lining up something. He's lining up something.
Yeah, the only thing it could be is Make It Rain or Noxian Fervor. We see the first Fervor come off. To deny the lifesteal from the Dragonling. We'll see if this catches the Deny.
So as much as you're like, okay, you need the Deny for the decimates, this Noxian Fervor is technically representing 5 damage, as it is negating the lifesteal from this Dragonling as well. So it is more damage than a decimate. And if we see Captain Farron come down right here, right now, I mean, it's not out of the question that Greenseers loses this one. He's out of spells in hand for the Lee Sin.
And then also the Gangplank too. And do note that the Gangplank being leveled up, not going to be able to make a shield if Greenseers even had the spells to protect the Lee Sin from the block. Going to have to try and find a way to get this last 4 damage in. Especially if the Farron does show up. I think there's going to be a big pour on the board next turn. We see 5 cards. This will probably be Asleep with the Fishes on the keg to get 3 in. That's 9. Gangplank gets another keg. That's pushing another 2. The Deny might even have to just go on the Gangplank attack.
Yeah, I mean, so the Gangplank attack does put gems in Greenseers' hand, so we will have activators for the Lee Sin. but you are at a relatively scary life total if you block with anything other than the Lee Sin. But I mean, if Greenseers can pick up a second spell here, if he can deny the Gangplank ability and get the barrier down onto the Lee Sin, then I think he's in, as advantageous as a position as you could be. I still don't think he's necessarily in danger of losing this one next turn, but he does have to keep this Lee Sin. Actually, he doesn't even really have to keep the Lee Sin alive. If he can trade this for the Gangplank, he's wide enough on board that he should be able to just go around easy and kill him from 4.
Yeah, absolutely. But that would probably include denying the Gangplank attack just to make sure that you don't lose the Diana and the Mentor. But there's a question. There's the Zenith Blade.
All right. Really unhelpful in the grand scheme of things. I think that you are in a position where this Lee Sin doesn't need Overwhelm in order to close out the game. So not sort of the ideal top deck. And now Darius coming down, that one of Darius out of Ez2Win.
Wow.
So that is the blocker that you need for the Darius. Now the Gangplank free to run over the rest of the board, and Ez2Win, I believe, still has a card in hand that was gotten off of a Zap Sprayfin. If it is a Noxian Fervor, we could just see the game end here.
Yeah, the deny on the Gangplank attack here could line up a block Lee Sin on Darius, would still produce 1 damage, and then you got 3 more coming from this Overwhelm. That's 4.
Yeah, oh man, you have to deny that, and that leaves you at 5. A keg with a Noxian Fervor does represent 4, so... Oh, you don't want to go to 3. You want to go to 5. You don't have the board space to make 2 Dragonlings anyway, so I don't think you're too upset about losing one of these eyes.
Right. I think what he was looking, you really want this Mentor to die at the same time, too, because you want these gems for this open attack so you don't die to a Decimate.
Oh, man. He should be fine on the open attack because he does oh, no, he's 1 shy of lethal on the open attack with the Lee Sin specifically, but I think the other units should be enough to pull it through. But now a Decimate does still represent lethal because the keg is on the board, and there is the Decimate for 5 damage. All day I thought this card did 5, and I'm finally correct. Ez2Win picks that one up.
Wow. That Darius showed the one of Darius. Good inclusion to close that game right there. And bring Ez2Win Grand Finals champion. Qualifier number 3. The champ is here.